Mark Rogers TV and Last Word on Sports talking about the Les Miles coaching situation at LSU. According to ESPN, they have a source that says it's a very good possibility that LSU will buy out Les Miles' contract because a high-ranking source involved in the decision regarding the coach's future said that they're in negotiations right now. Of course, they're looking to win national championship, and that has not happened in 8 years. We also have published reports that say, on the contrary, there is no talk right now on campus about Les Miles and LSU parting ways. We bring in David Waters of Gator Sports Radio to maybe talk about what we think the truth could possibly be, and then what we think about Les Miles' tenure at LSU. So David, it's impossible to know what the truth is right now. Obviously, a lot of LSU fans not happy with recent losses. Let's see, 7-3 this year after the big start, 8-5 last year, I believe 10-3 the year before. Sound like really good seasons at a number of places, but at LSU, they want to win the SEC. They want to win national championships, and Alabama's been in the way. So just your thoughts about, do you think LSU's considering letting him go?
I mean, I think they are. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and it seems to be, kind of the talk kind of started last week, and it was kind of surprising. Basically 2 weekends ago, LSU was number 2 playing Alabama, and who would have thought, a team that's ranked number 2 a couple weeks ago, we're sitting here talking about them getting rid of their coach and given that coach's history. Les Miles is taking over for Nick Saban. Saban left to go to the Dolphins, and he didn't really, skip a beat too much. LSU is always in the conversation for the SEC West, but they don't get there. So I guess, maybe that's part of the problem. He's lost 5 straight games to Alabama. I think that's going back to the rematch for the national championship game that they had. But it's crazy. The recruiting is going well, but, I guess, if it's national championship or bust, I guess, the boosters and other high-ranking officials have a gripe if that is the ultimate goal, which, it is for most schools. But, what's the cutoff point where if it's not national championships, what else do you have to do?
Yeah, if you take LSU and take their recruiting, their resources, and everything else and throw them in another division, looking at the SEC East or another conference, I think maybe we have a different discussion because they've got a different record. The 7-0 start may be a little bit deceiving. Their best win, I guess, would have been Mississippi State. I think definitively would have been Mississippi State on the road in Starkville. And if the Bulldogs make a field goal at the gun, they lose that game. Other than that, they beat Auburn, who was supposed to be good, turned out not to be so good. So they kind of puffed up the 7-0 record. And I don't know if they've truly shown that they're not a very good football team the last few weeks, or if that Alabama loss just completely catapulted them down the ranks and they haven't been able to recover from it. Les Miles criticized for game management, clock management. I've been one of his biggest critics in those areas, but I think on the plus side, the kids play hard for him. I think he's a strong leader. He's a great recruiter. I think many people assume that you recruit at LSU and it's easy and the kids just come that way, but they didn't before Nick Saban showed up and hadn't been for a number of years. This program was a 500 program for the late 80s into 2000, 2001 before Saban turned it around. So it would be a great job for anybody to have. There's no question about that. So just your thoughts about LSU's performance under Les Miles.
Like you said, you go back to this year, his best win, Mississippi State or Florida going in there, but Florida was playing with a backup quarterback, it wasn't the real Greer-led Gators, and they've taken a step back since then. So, but that's a top 10 ranked team, but, the way LSU has looked lately and the way Florida's looked lately, neither team looks like a world beater right now. And it took, Les Miles a lot to win, fake field goal to win that game. And like you said, clock management, and the lucky bounces that have went his way. Do they see some of the lucky bounces as luck? Is it not really his game day strategy that you could point to? It does seem like, and I've heard the argument, and it is hard to disagree at times, where if LSU's not playing somebody they outmatch, that's when they struggle. It's the teams where they can just line up and manhandle them. And you look at Arkansas, who probably plays that same style of ball, but then you got Brandon Allen, who can chuck it left and right and everywhere they need to go. And that's probably LSU's biggest problem. They've had talent everywhere on the field but quarterback. And even the days when they were winning national championships, it wasn't, the quarterbacks weren't throwing the ball 400, 500 yards like you see in these Big 12. It's the game management types. And going back to Matty Mock and Jordan Jefferson and now the Harris that they have now, none of these quarterbacks blow you away, even with all the talent they have at wide receiver and running back and offensive line. Everything is there, but the offense just can't break through with just relying on the running game. So, is that what happens? Are they looking at the whole package? And I hope they are. Do you give him one more year? Because they have the #1 recruiting class coming in. I've always been the type that you don't save a coach because of a recruiting class, but it's not like LSU is terrible right now. So it's kind of what all are they looking at to get rid of Les Miles?
Yeah, I applaud your restraint, David. I was staring at all that orange and blue, and I said LSU's best win of the season was Mississippi State. I was just scanning the schedule in my mind, and I was looking at the Western Division, and I forgot about the game in Death Valley against Florida. So Gators, that would be the best win of the season. Then we'll put Mississippi State at #2. So those would be the two significant wins for Les Miles. Again, getting back to the clock management, the game management, I would love to go through the schedule because I've got about 5 to 6 games in my mind that he blew. And I think the most recent one was 2 years ago because they just played at Ole Miss. So it would have been 2 years ago that they wasted at Oxford, where they were setting up for the game-winning field goal. They had the entire clock was in their hands because Ole Miss had no timeouts, and they could have killed the clock all the way down to nothing. They screwed up the time management. They kicked the go-ahead field goal with like 35 seconds, 40 seconds left on the clock, and allowed Ole Miss to run down the field in the last 30 seconds and win the game. It was comical that when you pour that much money into a football program and all those resources, and where at places like LSU and Florida, as you well know, they will spare no expense to get it right and get the right people in place and do everything that they can to win, that they blow situations like that. And he's done it repeatedly. But again, recruiting, great. I think he's a great figurehead for the program. And I don't say that in a negative way, but I think as being the face of the program, he garnishes a lot of respect, and he's a positive figure there. And the kids play hard for him, and they're drawn to him. They've lost more NFL talent underclassmen than anybody by far in the nation. And it's almost unfair that the direct comparison's Alabama, because again, any other comparison, they come out looking good for the most part against just about anybody else. But Alabama's been the gold standard. Ohio State's got the national title right now, but over the last 7-8 years, there's no question Alabama's been the best program in the country and kept LSU from winning a national championship maybe a couple more times.
Right, and like you said, Alabama is the gold standard, so if that's what you're comparing yourself to, that's difficult, and we see it also, with a similar style with Georgia and Mark Richt. It's kind of the same storyline there. And then, Rick doesn't have a national title to his credit like Les Miles does. So, that's, with a lot of the talk from there. But, all these SEC schools are comparing themselves to Alabama. And, that's such a dangerous precedent, and do teams start biding their time to win, whenever Saban retires from Bama, because, okay, maybe that's our chance. We just bide our time until then. But that's, that's probably not a way to look at it either. But, where does LSU go from here? That's the question, I think. And, it sets yourself up for a dangerous precedent if you get rid of a coach who has had the success that Les Miles has.
And so that would be where I'd make the decision. So if this is my call, then that's what I do. If you look at the recruiting rankings and the NFL talent, LSU's as good as Alabama in regards to a roster, personnel, year in, year out. So why are they not beating Alabama? Well, I think Alabama is just I think Nick Saban is just flat out a better game coach, and he's built a better program. So if you're going to try to knock off Nick Saban in Alabama and don't feel like Les Miles is the guy, which he has shown over the last 5 years that he's probably not the guy, you got to have a replacement. So if you don't have a replacement in mind that's Urban Meyer or somebody that you think is that good that can take the recruiting and the resources that you have, match Alabama and outcoach Nick Saban and win the SEC West on a fairly regular basis, then I keep Les Miles, maintain what you've mentioned in the past, the #1 recruiting class, and give him one more year to say, hey, let's give it another go. But I just think bad clock management, bad X's and O's. He's a very good coach. I think he's probably one of the 20 best coaches in the country, but he might be taking on the best coach in the country.
Right. And at times, maybe, there is a thing, it gets stale, and that happens, and whether, it's, players clocking out a little bit, but you said they play for him very well, and you can tell they do. But is there a certain message that's not getting through? And like I said, I really think it just really harks back when LSU really just not having a quarterback. And I hate to make it sound that simple, but I kind of just think that's where it goes. I think if LSU, remember the last time they had much a pretty good elite quarterback was probably Zach Mettenberger in the 1 year that he played for him, but Alabama goes and wins the national championship that year. So it's really tough when even your best quarterback still really can't get it done. But you put a quarterback with the talent of Mettenberger up with what they have now with Fournette and those receivers, and I think LSU has something. But maybe that's part of the problem that why can't Miles get that quarterback? Is it the coordinator that he brings in that quarterbacks are not sold on? Or is it really his problem and he's really sold on these quarterbacks coming out of high school and these guys aren't getting it done? Maybe that's the issue. But it's going to be really, really interesting to see if they do get rid of him. Where do they go next?
Yeah, I thought at the time that was the perfect place for Braxton Miller to head, but as it turned out, he wasn't healthy enough to play quarterback, and his shoulder's messed up, and he'll probably never be able to play the position. But had things worked out and him been healthy enough, that would have been fascinating. But obviously, it never turned out. So LSU, Les Miles, we'll have to wait and see what happens here. The Tigers take on Texas A&M to conclude a season that could be 7-4 after a big 7-0 start if they can't get past the Aggies, and then a bowl game after that, and they'll probably make a decision sometime between postseason play and at the end of the regular season. So David Waters from Gator Sports Radio joining us, talking some Les Miles. We invite your comments. Certainly chime in and join the discussion as well. Thanks, David.
Thanks.